Nothing could really get any worse than that. I can't speak. I had this terrible stammer, and every live show on a Saturday night, the format was you walk on once they introduce you, sing your song, head over to the judges, and then you go to Ant and Deck for a chat. I should have been focused on the song, but I was more worried about the chat at the end of it.
Did you feel like you were going to win at the time?
People always say they know exactly where they were when they watched that final and the feeling they felt afterwards.
Did you feel pressure because of it?
Early days, they had a formula. I was happy for them to kind of craft and mold me into what they wanted me to be. Simon Cowell would go, there you go, there's your next number one, there's your next number one, there's your next, and it was just like, I was very, very young, so, 18 when I started to go out, they all wanted pictures of me falling out of clubs, and I gave them. Simon Fuller wanted one thing, Simon Cowell wanted another, and they used to talk to me to try and get their own way, and I was like, we were kind of whisked away. And the day after the Pop Idol final, I was flown out to Florida to shoot my first video, and it was just crazy. And then I was in.
Gareth Gates, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm thrilled to be here and to chat. It'd be good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So tell me about how have you been? How's everything going for you?
Yeah, really good, actually. 23 years on from Pop Idol. I feel very old now.
Yeah.
But I'm as busy as ever.
Yeah.
I'm actually into producing now. I'm producing my own shows. I decided last year to give it a go.
Yeah.
So I produced a show called Gareth Gates Sings Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, which went really, really well. Big fan of Frankie's music. It was drummed into me as a child. And everywhere I go around the world, I always try and put a Frankie song in. So I thought having an evening of that would be great. And we're doing 10 more shows of that this spring.
Yeah.
And I'm also producing a show called Gareth Gates Sings Love Songs from the Movies.
Yeah.
My biggest hit and my first ever number one was a song called Unchained Melody, made famous by the movie Ghost.
Yeah.
And so I got to thinking a lot of the world's greatest love songs are from movies. And so we've put together a show with all those bangers in the same show.
Yeah.
We take that out starting Valentine's week, 10th of February, and it runs all of March and into April. So
lovely.
Busy times, but fun.
Amazing. There's so much to unpack there because I remember that. I remember it really vividly, Unchained Melody and all those sort of things. We'll start with Pop Idol. I think it's probably a nice place to start, really, because that kind of what took you from sort of overnight, everyone knowing your name. And it was in that time when it was, I don't know, the sort of how many millions of people would watch. It was probably tens of millions more than it would be now. Like
Sure.
It's that time of telly when everyone used to sit down on a Saturday night and watch stuff. So what was it like for you in that time of your life and that time of your career, going from being effectively an unknown to all of a sudden you couldn't go anywhere without everyone knowing your name?
Pop Idol was the first of its kind, well before X Factor and the likes. And so we went into it blind. We had no idea what it was to become and what we were to become.
Yeah.
So it was exciting, but it was also, fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Now when people enter into those things, they know exactly what to expect and, what would be thrust upon them. But myself and Will and all those contestants that entered into that first one, it was kind of exciting fear.
Yeah.
Literally things changed overnight. I remember being in Covent Garden the day before, just out and about shopping, and then the first live show aired, and we went back out into the same spot to do some more shopping. And, the difference overnight was just vast.
Just crowds of people.
Everybody around us, it kind of got out of hand, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it literally
was that
happened
overwhelming?
that quick. Yeah, it was quite at first. But I think the fact I was only 17, a young boy from Bradford, I was sort of up for anything.
Yeah.
And I just enjoyed everything about it. I think the older people in the competition maybe thought a bit more into it, but I just enjoyed the ride, as it were.
Yeah, I remember just it being that series, it was what everyone was talking about. Because I think was it a summer thing? Did I imagine that?
No, it was. Well, it actually started at the end of 2001.
Yeah.
And we did, I think, 3 or 4 live shows before Christmas and then over Christmas. And then the final was February 2002. So, yeah.
And I remember the conversation around it. It was like, it was much bigger than anything now, like much bigger than Strictly or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so what was it like for you sort of going through that process? So was it just, did it come to you sort of accidentally, effectively, and then you found yourself wrapped up in this thing that became this huge thing? What was that like, sort of finding your way through it?
Yeah, my mum actually saw the advert for Pop Idol.
Yeah.
And it said something like, are you the next Robbie Williams or Kylie Minogue?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I can't speak. I had this terrible stammer. It was much worse than what it is these days, quite debilitating at times. And so I was so shy, but I knew I could sing. And, that was my only form of expression, my only way of getting out of me what was in me. And so my mum sort of asked me to do it. I was very reluctant at the start, but, kind of plucked up the courage. But in the show, and every live show on a Saturday night, the format was you kind of walk on once they introduce you, sing your song, head over to the judges, for them to pass comments on how you did, and then you go to Ant and Deck for a chat.
Yeah.
And I should have been focused on the song because I was there. It's a singing competition, but I was more worried about the chat at the end of it with Ant and Deck. I wasn't worried about the singing. Yeah. I was just like, let's just get this over so I can head over there and just, But I was so nervous about that, and it was tough because, having to speak on live television when you aren't able to speak was really, really hard. But it was a great experience, and I'm really fortunate that I got as far as I did and had the career that I had out of it. Yeah,
it's really, I was thinking back about it because I remember those moments. I remember the conversations more than I think I remember the singing, which is interesting, But I think what they were good at then was they gave you the space as well, I think. They gave you quite a lot of space to be yourself.
That's right.
and to speak and answer the questions in the time that it needed and those sort of things, which we did a huge amount of work for sort of awareness, I suppose.
That's right.
Were you aware of that at the time? And I guess the second part of that as well is not only being aware of it, I just think the more you worry about it, I suppose, the more it kind of, it's cyclical, Is that what it felt like?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of my greatest achievements is that I heightened the awareness of stammering. Lots of people, even to this day, say to me, it's because of you that I did something about my speech, or not let my affliction hold me back. Not only people who have stammers, any form of affliction. Yeah. And, any opportunity I get to mention my speech, I'm a bit sort of advocate for that because, if I can inspire one person to not let, what they're going through hold them back, from what they want to achieve and exactly what they want to be in life, then my work here is done.
Yeah. That's so lovely. I guess my thought process is, if you're worrying about those conversations, whether or not it then sort of heightens the sort of symptoms of your stammer, for want of a better turn of phrase.
That's right.
And so was that something at the time that was a big sort of, what word am I after? Sort of a big thing in your brain? Was it a big focal point for you?
Yeah, and that really sums up having a stammer. You're pushed into a pressurized situation. You know that you're going to find it hard. Live TV, millions of people watching. You try to get your personality across. These TV shows are not just about this singing. It's about who you are. It's about people kind of buying into you as an artist and as a person and a personality. And all that pressure, you're absolutely right. It's just like a vicious cycle. Yeah. And essentially trying to sell yourself. And I didn't have the capability to do that. But Pop Idol was so great for me, because I think if I'd have tried to make it as an artist without a show like that, without letting people in and seeing exactly what I'm about, I don't think I'd have made it in the industry, or I'd have found it much harder. Allowing people to see my speech journey and the struggle, would have only have happened with a show like Pop Idol. And it was the first of all the sort of what's the sort of backstory. And now it's sort of all about that, isn't it, on these TV shows? But I was the sort of OG of that, I guess.
It's really interesting because it was Simon Fuller, Pop Idol.
Yes.
Who, I don't know what your relationship is or was with Simon Fuller, but he seems to I was watching the Beckham documentary, and obviously he was managed by Simon Fuller, and then Simon Fuller does the ABBA thing in London. Right. He seems to make a success of these things in a huge way.
Yes.
Did you have much? Did the not necessarily Simon personally, because I don't really know anything about Simon, but certainly the team behind the show have much of an input in your career after the show?
Yeah, so Simon Fuller was my manager for many, many years.
Yeah.
I was signed to him, management-wise. I was signed to his record label.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of in partnership with Simon Cowell's label. But it was Simon Fuller's baby, and he was in charge. Pop Idol was his brainchild. Obviously, he went on to do American Idol and all the Idols series all around the world. Everybody thinks it was Simon Cowell's thing, but it wasn't. It was all about Fuller.
Famously fell out for it, I think, didn't they?
And it was tough at times, because I sometimes felt like I was in the middle because Simon Fuller wanted one thing, Simon Cowell wanted another, and they used to talk to me to try and get their own way, and I was like, just speak to each other.
So fascinating.
But both great guys, both very powerful men in the industry, and I was very, very fortunate to have them kind of both on side and both in my corner, and I think that's why I had lots and lots of success.
So because of you assigned to sort of both Simons, Simon squared, Simon Cowell on one side and Simon Fuller on the other. When Pop Idol finished and X Factor took over, did that have an impact on your career? Because obviously, there's a dynamic there that say you're in the middle of. Did that have an impact?
Yeah, possibly. It's always the same with these shows. The next year there's going to be another act out there, that's flavour of the month. But I was fortunate, I guess, and the same with Will, that X Factor was Simon Cowell's, and our manager was Simon Fuller anyway.
Yeah.
So we were kind of protected, and there was still, him sort of rooting for us, as it were. When X Factor came along.
What was the sort of things that you'd have to do? So when you come off the back of a big show like that and you've got this platform to keep an audience and keep the interest and build the career from that place, what sort of stuff did you have to go through and did you have to do?
Well, we were kind of whisked away, and everything was kind of planned in the early days. The day after the Pop Idol final, I was flown out to Florida to shoot my first video, and it was just crazy. And then I was in. We were off, recording the album all around the world. A lot of it was recorded in Sweden, and so we would just. It was kind of all planned for us, I guess. When it come to the second album, and when we had a bit more, kind of say and control over it, I enjoyed that process because I was a part of the decision making, as it were. But the early days, they had a formula, exactly how they wanted it to run, and I was happy with that. Because at that age, 17, I had no idea what I wanted what artist I wanted to be, what even music I wanted to create, because I was so young. So I was sort of happy that Simon Cowell would go, there you go, there's your next number one, there's your next number one, there's your next, and it was just like, okay.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's such a, especially 17, because when you're 17, you feel like you know the world and you're invincible, and then you look back, you go, I was so young.
Yes.
I was so naive, and so to have those sort of people behind you and that team behind you, it must have been amazing.
Yeah, it was great. I certainly felt like I was in safe hands. There wasn't, and I was fortunate, and you hear these horror stories of, kind of bands in their infancy being taken advantage of. But I was very, very fortunate. I was with the manager and the founder of the Spice Girls. I was like, wow, that's incredible. And I was with Simon Cowell, who put together Westlife and all those big bands. So I was like,
did you feel pressure because of it? Or did you feel like you'd sort of earned your keep by building an audience? Because as I say, in those days, everyone was talking about you and Will and that dynamic just over the dinner table. So
sure.
You had the audience. So were you aware of that? Or did you feel sort of, I'm new to the industry and I'm basically at a party with the Spice Girls or Westlife or whatever?
Yeah, I was happy for them to kind of craft and mold me into what they wanted me to be. In hindsight, looking back, I wish I'd have been, had a bit more of an idea, as to what I wanted to be in the music I wanted to create. Because, sort of many years on, I now know exactly what I'm into. I've grown up now, but at the time I was happy just to kind of go along for the ride. There wasn't too much pressure.
No.
If I'd have been a bit older, I think I'd have felt the pressure. But
I suppose there's more at stake as well when you're older. When you're younger, you kind of you haven't got the weight of your past experiences behind you or career you're up to that point.
That's right.
And so you don't worry so much because it's only upside. What's the worst that can happen, I suppose.
Yeah, there was a bit of pressure the more success I had.
Yeah.
I had 5 number ones, and so the first time a song didn't go to number one, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking, is this the end? So there was that pressure, but that was pressure on myself, I guess.
It's really interesting. I remember reading Steve Martin talk about this. He obviously isn't music, but comedy.
Yeah.
And just kind of was sort of subversive in his sort of career and how he was doing comedy. And he would see every time he'd do a show, the audience would get bigger and bigger and bigger until one day he said, I remember looking at the back of the room and seeing empty seats and going, oh, am I over that mountain now? Am I coming back down the other side? Sure. And so it plays tricks on you, I suppose. It kind of gets in your head, I guess. Yeah. Did you feel anxiety about that at the time? Did you feel worries about it?
Things start to go not as well as what it was. The first time I had a number 2 single, and you're like, oh, but it's part and parcel of it, and I was very aware, that you are flavor of the month at times, and with the X Factor product then emerging and them kind of churning them out every year. I was just very, very thankful though for everything that I'd achieved, and I'm also very, very fortunate, to be as busy now. I'm still stupidly busy. Yes, I don't have records in the charts, but I've, kind of gone on to carve out a career, for myself. And and
also I think everyone still knows you. Everyone knows who you are, and everyone remembers your career and remembers you. As I think a lot of the what the word am I after? The people that came after, through X Factor and those sort of things, don't have that necessarily.
No.
Even the people that won quite often. And I wonder how much of that is because you guys were the first ones, but how much of it was from the support that came afterwards?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both. That first show and that final, people always say they know exactly where they were when they watched that final, and the feeling they felt afterwards. and we really made history. And
Yeah.
it was
Did you
great.
feel like you were going to win at the time, or did you not know?
No, I didn't sort of allow myself to
Yeah.
kind of think like that.
Yeah.
The week before the final, we were both signed up as artists. We both, we were told we're both going to be making albums. So, yes, it was a bit gutting on the night, but we were both going to become artists anyway and be pop stars, which is what we both set out to be anyway.
What was your relationship like with Will?
Really good,
Yeah.
As I said before, we were going into something completely blind.
Yeah.
And so we only had each other. Nobody else had experienced this before us. And so, that really made our friendship.
Yeah. Do you
Really
still speak
quite
to Will
strong.
now?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, we speak quite often. We're both extremely busy, but any opportunity we get together, hang out, or just chat, we do.
I did wonder that because you're kind of in this melting pot of as you say, that you're the only ones that are going through it. So I was trying to work out whether or not that would mean you're super close or at the time certainly and really friendly, or if there was animosity there. And then particularly when you come off the back of Pop Idol and then Will's song goes to number one for 3 weeks and then your song goes to number one for 4 weeks, and you just think, I wonder if there was anything whether or not that created any friction, or if
No, we knew the format, and and they created 2 pop stars as opposed to 1, and so we were both thankful for the opportunity, and we both wanted the best for each other. That's I really, really mean that. We did a tour together. We released a song together that went to number 1, and we were in it together.
Yeah.
And, it was good.
I remember listening to Russell Howard talk about when he was first successful and famous and broke through. And he said, he was able to take his whole family on holiday, and it was comedy that made that happen. And the same thing with music for you. And that's the real lovely part of it is, and building a career and you feeling almost like responsible for being able to create those lovely things for your family. And I suppose at the age of 17, that's so lovely to be able to maybe not 17, but a few years after that, like you were still young, being able to do those sorts of things for your...
I was very fortunate to be able to do that. I did a song for Disney, actually, for Lilo and Stitch, and we had a number 1 with the song. And so I think it was Disney's first ever UK number 1 for their film or something, and they flew me and my family out to Florida, and we had 3 weeks there. We could do what we want.
Lovely.
Fast track on all the rides. It was perks of the job, but I've always sort of taken care of my family, and I get so much pleasure out of that. I really do.
Yeah. So obviously, and this is an interesting thing to sort of go through when you're young, in any, or maybe not even when you're young, even when you're older, where you go from no one knowing your name to everyone knowing your name, and then you get the negatives of that too, in terms of discourse and people online or the newspapers and those sorts of things, and negative stories. And I, particularly since doing this podcast, really, I've had more of an eye opening to that, particularly when people feel like they've got a sense of ownership over you. They feel like they've got a right to be negative, or even, the newspapers write, horrible things often. What was that like in those moments when you were coming off the back of Pop Idol, and then, well publicized things were written that just disparaging or otherwise? What did that feel like for you at that time in your life?
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock. All the papers and magazines, all the sort of press outlets were all on our side at the start.
Yeah.
And, that was the only experience that I had of them. They kind of really, really built us up. And so when they started to write, sort of not so nice things, it's a real sort of rude awakening. Yeah. Or I was very, very young. So, 18 when I started to go out, they all wanted pictures of me falling out of clubs, and I gave them.
Yeah.
But it was just part of growing up, and it was fun. But that's the sort of side of the industry that's quite tough. But saying that, I was badly bullied as a kid with my speech impediment. And so it was as though nothing could really get any worse than that. So that kind of set me up nicely for this industry. And to be able to take criticism or people being not so nice. I've heard it all before, and I've heard much worse.
I suppose it's the hard thing as well with those sorts of things is it's transient in that one day they'll be nice, then one day they'll be nasty, and then one day they'll be nice again. But it sticks with you because also like what you're effectively trying to do is entertain people and make people's days better and provide something that's entirely positive. And then so it's hard, I suppose, to have a thick skin and because you kind of want to know that you're doing a good job and know that people are enjoying your work and those things, but simultaneously trying to say, it doesn't matter that much when they say negative things or the negative stories, because those two things are two conflicting things.
And I appreciate that. I think the stories in the papers were never kind of criticizing me as an artist. They like to get the gossip on you, who you're in a relationship, what you're doing, and you just have to accept that that's part of the industry. And I entered into a show, Pop Idol, that, was as much about people getting to know you as the music that you create. And so, you just have to take that on the chin. And you sometimes hear artists kind of moan about that, but that's the industry, and you just have to accept that that's it.
And I suppose it's also, when you're, there's sort of column inches in your name, then people want to use it for that as well, I guess. How did that part of the experience of getting well known, and I don't necessarily mean Pop Idol or any particular story in particular or anything along those lines, but I just mean the whole thing of having public scrutiny, did that have an impact on people around you and your relationships with your family and those sorts of things?
I think my family found that very hard, seeing things. My mum found it hard to read, kind of negative comments about me, or people being sort of not too nice to me at times, but we all had to learn, that's part and parcel of it. The positives really do far outweigh the negatives, and nice it affects people differently. I just think I was, kind of trained as a kid having a stammer and being badly bullied. I was trained well for this industry, and and I've come out of it okay.
yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about sort of the awareness that you have created around stammering and those sorts of things. I guess the first question for anyone that's completely naive to stammering and what it is, what is it and what causes it? Do you know?
Well, I've stammered my entire life. For as long as I can remember, I haven't been able to get words out my mouth freely. There's no necessary cause to it. We don't actually know exactly what it is. It's a neurological condition. My dad had a stammer when he was young. My sister has a stammer. So it's like there must be some hereditary thing in there. I don't think a stammer as a whole is a hereditary thing, because it's basically the buildup of negative associations. I might have said a word not so well when I was young. A fellow classmate said, "Wait a minute, you've just said that wrong," which leaves a negative association. The next time I go to say that word, I have a fear of saying that word because last time I said it, I stumbled over it or something, and then it kind of snowballs. But my dad is very shy. And so maybe I inherited that trait from him, and then that's developed into a stammer. So who knows? It's just now, how I deal with it. I'm part of a speech therapy program called the Maguire program. Teaches you a new way of breathing, a new way of speaking, and also to tackle the mindsets that come with having a stammer. which is the fear of speaking. This situation now is a big feared situation of mine, but I force myself to do it. And by doing these over and over the years, that fear has become smaller and smaller. Yeah, and on the course that we go on, the biggest fear for us as Stammer is to go out onto the streets, speak to people, introduce yourselves into a busy town centre. And so what do? We force ourselves to do that. We introduce ourselves to 100 people, or ask them for directions, or just make a contact with them. And then we do public speaking. We get a soapbox, put it down in the busiest part of the city, and speak to many people watching. And it's only by facing that fear that you start to diminish that fear, and it becomes more manageable, I guess.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's fascinating, and also it must be lovely for you to see the growth and seeing. It's like I've heard you talk about fitness and things like that, and keeping on top of it. It's almost like fitness for your speech, I guess. And so it must be lovely to feel the growth in your ability to communicate. And also, I think what you were just talking about is stressful for anyone. Like, I wouldn't want to go and do,
Yes.
get a soapbox and do public speaking in a town square.
That's right. We see it as a sport, and if you put the work in, if you do the exercises you're supposed to do, and you have the courage to face these fearful situations, then you start to see results. And without that, I do really struggle. Yeah. I can't handle speaking situations like this, interviews. It's good to have a good level of control over it.
Yeah, I remember you talking about when your daughter was younger and worrying that she would mirror your stammer.
Massively,
Was that how did that play into your mindset?
Yeah, well, that actually made me do something about it, because I didn't want her to hear me stammer and struggle and copy the way that I speak, and then she develops a stammer. She fortunately hasn't. She talks for England, but I really put the work in then, and fortunately, she's absolutely fine.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I think that the sort of running theme, I suppose, of, in fact, I'll stick to this just a second,
sure.
And I'll come back to what I was about to say. Which it's just, and you mentioned this earlier, but it's amazing for just anyone that's sort of struggling in, almost just in terms of public speaking, as well as something like a stammer or something like that, to almost inspire people and open their eyes to if you can do whatever you would like to do, and you can get number ones and tour the country, I can do whatever I would like to do. And I suppose that's another positive of the process, and of sort of being well known by people. Is that something that you're aware of, and that you work towards? To sort of be a positive influence. I'm sure if it's fine. Yeah. Be a positive influence into and a help for people in who have a similar sort of.
I love the fact that I've inspired people that have any form of affliction. Yeah. Stammerers as well, but other people with anything that holds them back, to actually go, well, this doesn't need to define who I am. It doesn't need to dictate the person that I will be or become. You can do anything that you put your mind to. It'll be hard and it'll be a struggle, because you have this thing that you have to deal with. But actually, that struggle makes you stronger. And I'm, in a very sort of weird way, I'm quite glad I went through everything that I've been through, and that I have this thing, because it's made me who I am now. And actually in Pop Idol as well, it was the thing that set me out from the crowd. Up until that point, having a stammer was a very negative thing. I was badly bullied, beaten at times. It was awful. But then Pop Idol, it was the first time it actually had a positive effect on my life, because it was like, oh, you're that guy who isn't able to speak but can sing. And so it actually made me, special, as it were.
Yeah. I remember hearing you talk about when you're on stage as another character, you don't stammer, because you're partially because you've got lines to learn, but also more because you're playing the part of someone else. And so a lot of the part of your therapy, I suppose, if that's the right word to use, or speech, what am I trying to say? What's the right way of wording it when I'm saying, like the helping your speech? Is speech therapy the right way of wording it? Yeah. So as part of your speech therapy is sort of overcoming those sort of anxieties and things, and almost playing a part in your head. Do you reckon? I was going to say, does it stick with you? Because the thing I found fascinating was, you coming out and being assertive and confident and playing the part of that, when under the surface you maybe aren't necessarily feeling that, and it helps your speech. I was wondering how much that sticks with you afterwards. Like if you go on stage and you have to act like you're confident even though you're traditionally quite shy, whether or not that bleeds into your personality and you start to feel more confident and feel more outgoing. Yeah,
I think, every time we perform, and I'm sure you feel this when you perform, it's as though you're wearing a mask. You're on stage. You're not you adopt a different persona. When I'm on stage as a pop star, I'm Gareth Gates, a pop star. It's not really me up there. It's you putting on a show. And even more so when you're in a play or a musical. I've been very fortunate to do some big shows. Joseph, Les Miserables, say that again. Les Miserables, Footloose, Legally Blonde. I've done lots of West End shows. And when I'm acting, when I adopt a different persona, when wearing a mask, I can read the dialogue. I can act without any issues at all because I'm not me.
Yeah.
And it's a strange thing, but it actually works.
Yeah. And I suppose with that, the thing that it seems to be sort of a running theme of these conversations is about creating your own opportunities. And, the secret to, and really I do think it is like the silver bullet secret to longevity in any kind of show business is, and I suppose maybe anything in life really, is creating your own opportunities. And I feel like since you sort of broke through, you never really stopped working, and now you're kind of at the point where you are producing shows for you to tour, because you've got the sort of ideas and the talent and the enthusiasm around those things. And then so you kind of go, why don't I just put my own tours on and have control of the whole creative process? And then you've got these tours in. What did you, was that a conscious thing, or did you just go, I want to make this thing, so I'm gonna make it?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for many producers over the years, and I just woke up one day and thought, well, actually, with all the experience that I've gained over the years, I can do this.
Yeah.
And I can be the person on stage and the person that puts it all together. I'm massively into business as well. I own a few businesses. I've got fingers in lots of pies. I've invested well. I own quite a bit of property and stuff. And so, my head as a businessman comes on and thinks, well, if I'm able to do all this, I'd rather have that control myself. And so, I'm producing my own shows now, and we're now going to be producing shows for other acts and other artists.
Yeah. The thing that I found, because I my shows are all self-produced, versus when they didn't used to be, they haven't always been, is that you've got more of a sort of a finger on the pulse of all the little nuances of it. So stuff can be more successful because you're able to tweak things or be more versatile or more reactive. And it's more work and it's stressful. But fundamentally, you are building something and you've got the vision. And then also you're not waiting for someone else to go, would you like to do this?
Yeah.
And, I was having this conversation with someone the other day where they go, I feel like I'm just sort of forcing my way in to do these shows. And I was like, I think everyone's like that. I think we all, in a roundabout sort of way, to sort of establish ourselves in showbiz or in anything really, you have to do that. You have to go, this is what I want to do, and I'm just not going to let anyone say no. I'm just going to go and make those things happen.
I always and have always kind of strived for more. I'm just that, I'm wired that way. And I'm in this sort of new world of production now, and it's really exciting and it's fun. And I'm in talks at the minute about producing a few big West End shows, and which is the dream come true of mine.
Yeah.
And it's that whole sort of work smarter, not harder. Well, I'm having to work much harder now, to sort of establish myself in that world. But with the idea of a few years down the line to not have to do as much work and sort of enjoy life a bit more, I guess.
Yeah, so talk to me about the show. What is it that you're both the shows, I suppose?
Yes.
What is it you're enjoying, and what are they going to become? Like, what are you trying to create with them?
Yeah, it's my first experience of producing, and I'm essentially just kind of learning the ropes. I could have very, very easily delegated, things to people within my team, but I actually wanted to get my hands dirty and learn, every part of production, even just booking the venues to doing the marketing to casting it myself. And it's been a really fun learning curve. The last tour I did last autumn, made some mistakes, but I've learned from them. So I'm applying them to this coming tour. The show that's going out is called Gareth Gates Sings Love Songs from the Movies. My biggest hit was Unchained Melody, made famous by the movie Ghost. And, all those, there's so many great love songs that were from movies. And so it's a night full of that. I've cast an amazing bunch of West End singers, all backed by a live band. And we're taking it out on the road. It's going to be fun. I think we're doing all the venues you do. I'm kind of trailing behind you.
Or the other way, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What sort of songs are you looking forward to singing in there?
Yeah, well, there's some big epic, ballads that come from movies like Titanic, A Star Is Born, Armageddon.
Yeah.
And then there's, sort of up-tempo stuff like Pretty Woman, My Girl. What else? Yeah, there's just so many of those big songs, and doing the research for it and putting the set list together, you don't realise how many love songs come from films. And so we're celebrating that fact.
Yeah. I suppose it's, you go out and you first start producing stuff and putting it together, and then you make those mistakes, whatever they may be, and then you fix them, and then you move to the next thing. That's just a testament, really, to growing, and you're kind of stretching, and then so there'll always be those sort of teething problems, so to speak, whatever they may be, and they're usually small or learning, even if they're right. And it's just it kind of just means it's part of the process of doing something new and exciting, and it's sort of a testament to growing and stretching.
Yeah, and I'm really, really loving it. I enjoy producing now. I think it's that element of control as well, and also the amount of experience I've built up over the years. I've done lots of shows and big shows. So all of that stuff I've learned, I'm now trying to apply into my own shows.
How do you go about? Because you've got a big band behind you, and then like a cast with you, that's a huge undertaking in terms of like logistics and stuff, and getting into venues and making all that work. How's that been? How have you found that?
Yeah, it's hard work. It's a lot of hard work. And we're doing all of the, so everybody's travel, hotels, making sure people are there on time, rehearsals, sound checks. If one person is late, in the band or the cast, it sets everybody back. And so, it is a logistical nightmare, but, when it runs smoothly, then it's joyous. So
do you sort of get everyone into a rehearsal room and do the show, and then you kind of is the show then sort of more or less every day or a handful of times a week, where you go and then you get into the venue and you go, right, we're gonna have to give this a run, make sure it all fits, and make this goes here and that goes there, and then
we have like 2 weeks rehearsal before the show actually goes out on the road. So everything's up and running. We've kind of ironed everything out then, and then we go around each venue. I think for 8 weeks, I think we've probably got about 6 shows a week, so it's really full on. And one-nighters as well. I'm sure it's hard work. You're in, set up, do the show, break everything down. You're out onto the next, and you're often driving 3 or 4 hours to the next venue to do the same. And it is tiring and hard work, but it's if you get a good crowd and they're really up for it and they respond to the music and the show that you've spent tirelessly putting together, then it's sort of all worth it.
Yeah, I think it's the get-ins and the takedowns, I think, that wears you out as well. Right. Sometimes when you're in a place for a while, even if you're doing 8 shows a week or whatever, it's tiring, but it's a different sort of tiring.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of the process every day of like doing that and then getting it taken down and then moving to the next venue. It's like it's a big thing. Like but I suppose when you've got a cast of people around you, if everyone gets on, it's lovely. Like that.
That's right.
That really helps.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is. You cast for talent, but you also have to try and put good people together, because if there's a awkward person in the group, then, it's
where the dramas come.
Yeah, exactly. No, I don't want to. So, but I've been very, very fortunate up to now. Yeah. I've worked with great people, who just sort of get on with the job and have fun to be around. There's a nice energy in the room. And let's hope that continues, I guess.
Yeah. So what's the ambitions for you moving forward the next couple of years? Sort of where do you see yourself heading? Like what's it you're excited for?
I'm excited to be a producer. I'm talking to various artists about producing their shows first and foremost. And then there's 2 big West End shows that I'm hopefully going to be co-producing that are coming over from Broadway.
Amazing.
We're going to be the sort of UK representatives of them. And I'm also writing a musical as well. We're in the sort of latter stages of that. It's called Speechless. It's about a guy that can't speak, extremely apt.
Yeah.
And, just to try and educate people as to what it is to have a stammer, because it's not just a good, it really controls your life, who you are, the decisions you make. And that's really going to be a powerful musical. We've pretty much secured a West End venue for that, which is very, very exciting for 2026. So watch this space on that. But lots of exciting projects.
Yeah.
I'll always perform because I really, really love it. But I'm really excited to be a producer, and do a lot of, the kind of behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, I think it's amazing, sort of the whole thing. And I think, from when you first broke through, but even to now, the sort of the work that you do in terms of inspiring people, but awareness for, stammers and, any kind of thing that kind of affects people's confidence and those sorts of things. I think you've been a huge advocate for. And I think, it's so lovely because everyone kind of feels like they know you from, 23 years ago as we started to now, and everyone can kind of see the growth in that from someone that's 17 to now someone that's producing their own things and everything in between that's happened in between. I think it's amazing, and I think it's such a lovely testament to you. And I think your legacy will be the amount of people that are now able to do what they're able to do because they've seen you on telly or on stage. And I think that's so lovely. I
really appreciate that. Thank you. And this musical I've written, will, is my legacy, I think. And, I've really put my heart and soul into it. And, I can't wait for the world to see that, and for it to hopefully help change more lives and encourage people to never give up on their dream, even if they're in the midst of adversity or, if they have something that holds them back. It's amazing. Thank you so much for coming, Gareth. I wish you the very best with the tour. How can people get tickets if they would like to? Well, you can go to www.garethgatessings.com. All the venues are on there. We're going literally everywhere around the UK. I think it's 35 dates this coming spring. So it's big tour, and look forward to seeing as many people there as possible. Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you having me. Thank you. Beautiful. So that was Gareth Gates. What a lovely conversation. I really find
Gareth, super interesting to talk to, particularly sort of like the early days of Gareth's career, really. When he first broke through, just going from this person that no one knew to all of a sudden just everyone talking about him and knowing his name. And then the Stammer it was really interesting because, I mean, he obviously still works on it and you can sense it in, when he speaks. But, we could all probably remember when Gareth was first on telly and just not being able to get his words out, and the growth there is amazing and it's inspiring, really. And just to see sort of those coping mechanisms of being able to go from someone that could never ever able to speak to now just get past the things that gives him fear and anxiety. It's amazing. It's really, really lovely. So I really, really enjoyed that conversation. I hope you did too. And until next time, I'll see you later. Goodbye.